The entire 2023 offseason has just been about this one thing: player empowerment. Conversations around James Harden trying to force his way out of Philly, Damian Lillard trying to force his way out of Portland, even calling back to like past examples of player empowerment like Ben Simmons, LeBron, Kevin Durant, etc. And even predicting future superstars who are probably going to follow the blueprint as well, like a Karl Anthony Towns, Joel Embiid, or a Donovan Mitchell maybe, or even LaMelo Ball. And every time I talk about player empowerment, I always make sure to emphasize that I'm on the side of the players at the end of the day. If a team decides to overpay a player, it's not the player's fault. Go get your money. Throughout my time as an NBA fan, I've never opposed that. If a player doesn't want to play in a certain situation anymore, it's their right to leave. Even with the whole Dame situation and the NBA cracking down on players specifically asking to go to specific teams, I still think that players should have that right also. The only real problem I have with the player empowerment movement is that sometimes the players go about it the wrong way. Like for example, sitting out because your demands aren't met. And this is where my problem with James Harden lies. And if you don't know what happened with James Harden, I'll give a quick summary. Basically, James Harden and Daryl Morey had an under the table agreement that basically started last season, I believe. Last season, Harden wanted a max, but instead he decided to take a pay cut so that the Sixers could fill out the roster more. This allowed them to get guys like D'Anthony Melton on the team, and it helped the Sixers roster immensely. What the agreement was that the next offseason, Harden was going to get a max. And from what I believe, because of James Harden's performance in these 2023 playoffs, Daryl Morey decided that he wasn't going to give him the max. And because of that, Harden decided to publicly call him out and say that he is a liar, in China of all places, by the way, and basically publicly demand a trade. And the NBA actually fined James Harden $100,000, mainly for the soundbite of, "I'm not going to be a part of an organization that he's a part of." And again, I don't have a problem with Harden demanding a trade. Hell, he has every right to be upset about the fact that Daryl Morey basically promised him something and he's not going to get it. Harden has every right to be upset with Daryl Morey. But in my opinion, where the problem lies is A, you made a handshake agreement which is not 100% guaranteed, and Harden should have known that when negotiating his contract. B, the reports weren't even 100% clear on if Morey actually wanted to give him the max or if he even had the authority to make that decision in the first place. A lot of people think the idea of being a GM in the NBA is like 2K My League or something, where the general manager makes all the front office decisions and he doesn't have to get approval from anybody, and the owner is just sitting there in his office doing nothing. Like, no. Just like any other business, certain decisions have to be signed off on. And who knows, maybe the Sixers' hands were tied. And again, I agree with Harden's cause, but the way he's going about it, I don't agree with at all. At the end of the day, a trade is not in the player's control. Unless you have a no trade clause, you have no input on where you're going. And then when you think about it further, Harden deciding to sit out and miss training camp is only going to hurt his chances of actually getting the money that he believes he's worth and going to whatever destination he wants to go to. Harden sitting out sends a bad message to any team that Harden wants to go to, and it's already hurting his already bad track record. Philadelphia is the third team that Harden is requesting a trade from. In 2021, he came into training camp out of shape. Because he was a star on that team, he was basically daring somebody to do something about it. In Brooklyn, he demands a trade because KD and Kyrie weren't pulling their weight, and then now he wants out of Philly because of contract disputes. And let's just be honest with ourselves, is James Harden really worth a max anymore? Like, okay, in the 2023 regular season, he did play great. He led the league in assists, he averaged 20 points per game, the Sixers were really good. But when it came to the elimination game 7, we all knew it was going to happen. Like, let's not act like Daryl Morey was not in Houston for like the past 10 years before he came to Philly. He's seen Harden's playoff output firsthand. Like, I would understand if Harden has a phenomenal 2024 season and finish out his contract strong. I would get why his demand would go up. But the truth of the matter is, Harden is in his 30s. He's very clearly lost a step due to injury. He's not the scoring threat that he used to be. And the best thing that he can provide for any team right now, especially the Clippers, is really, really good playmaking. And it's looking like the Sixers have no plans of even trading Harden. So let's say Harden sits out for the entire 2024 season. And for the sake of argument, let's also say Harden is still delusional enough to think that he's worth a max contract. Who was offering him a max? The Clippers' payroll is already too high. I don't see any contender going after him either. Like, bro, he's just setting himself up for failure. Not to mention his already tainted reputation. Like I mentioned before, he already requested out of 2 other situations, not including this Philly one, and he also has a reputation of getting his coaches fired. I remember vividly, I heard a story about after the 2015 Western Conference Finals, James Harden once again underperformed, and he actually got benched in that game 6 where they made that infamous comeback. And because he got benched in that game 6, he plotted on getting Kevin McHale fired. He came into training camp out of shape. The Rockets went on a really slow start. 10 games into the season, Kevin McHale was fired. And with this Daryl Morey clip, I believe that Harden tried to get him fired also. I wouldn't put him past him because of his history. And looking at this situation from somebody who's very neutral on James Harden, I'm thinking Harden is going to screw things up for everybody because it's just making him look like a diva who, when things don't go his way, he's just going to demand a trade. And I'm looking at the way the NBA is handling this whole thing. It's looking like the NBA has reached a breaking point with this whole players demanding trades thing. The NBA is out here sending out memos. They're out here finding players. They're getting in touch with players' agents. Like, they're actually trying to stop this in real time. And I really don't blame them because this is becoming a genuine problem. Again, with James Harden, I have no problem with him being upset with Daryl Morey. He has every right to be upset. But there needs to be some level of accountability for the way he's handling this entire thing. And in regards to the whole player empowerment debate, where it becomes more nuanced is when you start talking about the Damian Lillard situation. And once again, I feel the same way. Damian Lillard has every right to want out of Portland. If we're being real, Dame has a way stronger case than Harden does. Because for the past 10 years, Dame's been in the same situation, just one team. And the criticism that he's been receiving has been really dumb. I can understand why the league wouldn't want Dame to publicly acknowledge that he wants to go to one specific team, but when the fans are doing it, it just makes zero sense to me. For the past 10 years, Dame has built a rapport with the front office. He gave them 10 years of his career, 10 years of his life if you really think about it. Multiple playoff appearances, a Western Conference Finals appearance, 2 clutch game winners in the playoffs, 50-point games, multiple winning seasons. Because of Dame's loyalty and the rapport that he built with the front office, he has every right to request that he goes to one desired team. And if we look at every single team that could trade for Dame, the only 2 destinations that make sense is Miami and New York, with Miami being the obvious number 1. The only criticism, in my opinion, that's justified of Damian Lillard is the fact that he is a bit of a hypocrite. Remember, Dame branded himself as the lone loyal superstar in the league, full of players that are quote-unquote team hopping. He criticized other stars like Paul George who are quote-unquote running from the grind. So yeah, it is pretty damn hypocritical. The situation that Dame has been through over the past 10 years is very, very similar to what guys like Anthony Davis, LeBron, Kevin Garnett have all been through. They were the lone star on a playoff level team, and the front office didn't build around them properly. This is what the entire player empowerment movement was built on in the first place. Remember, going into this upcoming season, Dame's going to be 33 going into year 11, and Portland is not looking competitive at all in this Western Conference. With Dame being under contract for the next 3-4 years, going to Miami is probably the best shot he has in order to win a championship. And where I have respect for Dame is that even if his demands aren't met, even if he doesn't get traded by the start of the season, he's still going to suit up and report to training camp and play the season. And I find it really dumb that people are criticizing Dame, but they're not really keeping that same energy for Harden. Like, yeah, Harden's getting his criticism or whatever, but people didn't come for him nearly as much as they came for Dame, even though what Harden is doing is clearly worse. Like, when I look at what Harden and Ben Simmons did during their trade request, it just showed a lack of professionalism. Like, I understand you don't want to be in this situation anymore, but as a professional and as a grown man, there's a certain way you should handle it. And I know a lot of people don't think about like the NBA like this, but it's literally a business. Just think about what the NBA would look like if players were just routinely just sitting out because they didn't want to be in a certain situation anymore. If that was reality, literally contracts would not mean a damn thing. Teams would be getting scammed left and right. They would sign a guy to a max contract and then all of a sudden he wants to trade. And that's the thing with this whole player empowerment thing. There has to be a balance. It should be fair enough for the organizations because dealing with a disgruntled star is not easy, and that doesn't take into account how much money you lose if the player decides to sit out, how it affects the team record, the team morale, etc., etc. It should also be fair for the players too though, because when you think about it from a worker/employer perspective, at the end of the day, all the organization cares about is making as much money as possible. The organization's leverage is that they provide the players with a check, they provide provide equipment for training, nutrition, film, transportation, etc. They hire a medical staff, they hire a coaching staff, they hire statisticians, all these people to help this team win. Like, the organization is investing millions, tens of millions into a team, and they're also investing more just to keep them at the top of their game. That's where the organization's leverage comes from in the contract. Where the players' leverage comes in is that they drive ticket sales, they keep the team relevant, they drive social media traffic. Basically, the players generate revenue for the team. Meanwhile, the organization is reinvesting that money. If you put yourself in Damian Lillard's shoes, you'd realize how much you're doing for an organization that isn't doing anything for you. For the better part of a decade, Dame was top 10 in jersey sales, and he played a big part in the franchise becoming significantly more valuable. Not to mention how many times he brought them to the playoffs, which they probably sold out playoff tickets because the Blazers fan base is very active. So yeah, from that perspective, yeah, Dame is doing a ton for this franchise, and it's messed up that they couldn't even put a competent roster around him. But Dame is lucky because most organizations will not show as much grace compared to what they showed to Dame. When it comes to trade requests, bro, they're not going to let you go to whatever team you want to. Look at Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard, he wanted to go to the Lakers, right? But because of all the tension that was caused due to like the whole injury thing, he got shipped to Toronto. But yeah, man, to wrap up this video, wrap up my thoughts on this whole player empowerment thing, players should 100% have the right to want out of a situation. But when they start pushing the envelope to the point where they're starting to sit out games, that's where I have an issue. That's the end of this video. If you enjoyed, make sure to hit that like button. I know I was gone for a minute, but more videos will be on the way soon, I promise. And if you want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe as well. But yeah, man, I'm out. Peace.